Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. On today's menu, I'll be baking up this delicious fruit cake, alcohol free, and you won't even know it. Let's get started. So I'm going to start off by rehydrating the fruits. I have some cinnamon leaves, star anise, some orange peel, some grape juice and water. And for the fruits, I have some raisins, cherry, prune, some cranberries, and some mixed dried fruits. Any fruit will work at this point. So here's my pot. I'm going to go ahead and add those spices in, the fruits, and I'm going to add the grape juice and water mixture to this. Bring it to the stove top. I'm going to bring it to a boil. Once it starts boiling, I'm going to turn the heat off and allow this to rehydrate and cool. So while it's cooling, it's rehydrating and the fruits are getting nice and plump. We don't really want to cook this too long. So once that's done, you turn off the heat and set aside to cool. After it's fully cool, this is what it's looking like. I'm going to go ahead, remove the leaves and the orange peel and the star anise, and I'm going to go ahead and puree these. As you can see, the fruits are nice and plump. I'm going to use my hand blender, but if you don't have a hand blender, feel free to add this to your regular blender and blend to your liking. So you could make your fruits chunky or smooth. As I said, do it to your liking. I like mine on the more semi-smooth side, not too chunky and not too smooth. This is the consistency I am looking for. This is perfect for me, so I'm going to set aside and get baking. It was that easy to rehydrate the fruits. So here are my ingredients. I have some flour, some sugar, I have my coloring, and for the coloring I'll be using the burnt sugar, but if you don't have the burnt sugar you could use browning. Either one works fine. Vanilla, lemon zest, my eggs, I have baking powder, salt, and mixed spice, and some butter. Here is the mixed spice that I'm using. It as in cinnamon, nutmeg, anise, and cloves, so that's perfect for me, but feel free to add your flavor spice blend. So into my bowl I went in with my softened butter and sugar. I do not like my cake too sweet, so I cut my sugar mixture in half, but feel free to use the full measurement that I will list down below and other recipes. So I'm just going to go ahead and cream the butter and sugar until it's nice and fluffy, and I'm going to go in occasionally with my spatula just to scrape down the sides and allow everything to mix well and incorporate, because we don't want some cream and some not cream. So you want to go ahead and do this until it's light and fluffy, whatever time it takes. If you want to use your stand mixer, go ahead. At this point my butter and sugar is nice and fluffy, and this is what it's looking like. So here are my eggs. I'm just going to go ahead and add the lemon zest to my eggs. This helps to cut down the rawness of the egg and add some flavor to your cake as well. So I'm just going to mix well. Then I'm going to go ahead and slowly add the eggs to the butter and sugar mixture in small amount and make sure that it's beaten properly before I add the next set. We don't want this to curdle in the bottom. It will curdle nonetheless because you're adding different temperature things, even though you started out room temperature. So you want to go ahead and mix well until the eggs are beaten in, and then you keep adding until all the eggs is fully beaten in. Now that my eggs are fully beaten in, I'm just going to go in with my spatula at this point, and I'll be using my spatula throughout until the batter is completely mixed. So in with 3 cups of that pureed fruits. So if you like your cake on the denser side, you could go in and add 4 cups or as much as you like, but I like a little balance in between. I want to have a little bit of cakey texture and a little bit of denseness. I don't want it all too dense, so you add your fruits to your desired texture and liking of your cake. So I'm just going to mix that in, add some vanilla, and add my coloring. As for the coloring as well, you add your coloring to your liking. If you like a cake on the darker side, you add more coloring. If you like it in the middle like I am doing here, feel free to add less. As I mentioned, I will leave a guide of what I use for this particular recipe down in the description box, and I'll leave the link to how to make the rum cake and some more Christmas treat that you'll absolutely love down below, and I'll link it in the cards above. So here I have my flour, and I'm going to go ahead, add the spice, the baking powder, and the salt, and I'm going to use my whisk to aerate this, adding some air into the flour. Feel free to sift this if you like. Now that's done, I'm going to go ahead and add my dry mixture to my wet in small amounts. So I'm just going to go ahead and add these in about 3 batches. You want to do the cut and fold method here. You don't want to be stirring as if you are mixing some gumbo or something like that. You want to cut and fold until the flour is fully incorporated. Over mixing can cause the gluten to develop in the flour, making the cake rubbery and dense, and the fruits are going to make it a little bit dense already, so we don't want a rubbery cake or a dense cake. We want the cake to have some nice balance and texture to it. So I'm just going to cut and fold until all my flour mixture is mixed in to my wet. So once the flour particle is all mixed in, that's it. You're done. You're ready to pour in your baking pan and bake. You don't want to overmix, and the batter should not be too runny or too stiff. It should have a nice balance. So here I have my baking pan and the butter paper that I saved earlier, and I'm going to use this to grease my pan. Feel free to use your baking spray, dust with some flour. I'm using a non-stick pan here and it always works for me, but if you want to go ahead and line your baking pan with parchment paper, go ahead and do that as well. So here I'm adding the batter to the pan. I'm using, this is what, an 8-inch pan, and the thing with these cakes, they don't rise a lot. They will rise but not too much. So if you want to add a generous amount of cake to your pan, you could go ahead, just don't overfill it. So this was perfect for this size, and my oven is been preheated to 270 degrees. I'll show you that in a bit. Here I am, level it out and make sure that there's no air pocket. So this is going to go into my preheated oven, and here I have some water that's going to go in the bottom of the oven. So that's my oven being preheated and the water in. This was baking for about 2 hours, low and slow. After 2 hours, my cake was done. So I'm just going to go ahead and brush on some more of that grape juice on top, you know, just to add a little bit of moisture back to the top because that was more exposed. The inside is super moist and don't need a lot of liquid on top. So I'm just going to brush on this and set this aside to cool. I allow this to cool overnight before I dig in, and I'll show you what it's looking like once it's done. Fast forward to the next day. This is what my cake is looking like. I'm going to go ahead and cut into it and show you what we are working with. This was so good. You don't even miss the alcohol. But if you are into alcohol, I have a few videos on how to make the alcohol version down below. But if you are not into alcohol, this is perfect for you and you won't even miss the booze. So guys, let me show you something. This was so soft, moist, has a perfect texture for me. I was so in love with this cake. I will leave the recipe for this down below. I'll link it in the cards above, and I'll also link the other rest of cake recipes just in case you want to try either one. That's it, my beautiful people. Thank you so very much for watching. Bye bye.